Please welcome Melissa Dohme.
Thank you. I am so honored to be here today to share my story and raise awareness about the epidemic of domestic violence and dating violence in our country. This is an opportunity I feel very blessed to have. Even being able to speak is an opportunity I feel very blessed to have. So before I begin, I just want to show this short 48 hours clip to give you a visual of my experience.
He always told me that if I was to break up with him, he would come back and kill me. I went outside to meet Robert Burton. He said that he just wanted a hug, a final goodbye. He put his arms around me for a hug. I heard a switchblade flip open. He just started stabbing me with that knife. My hair felt soaking wet. It was my blood. I basically walked outside to my murder. I just kept praying. Just please don't let me die.
As you can see, I have been through a horrific tragedy that happened 1.5 years after I graduated high school from Clearwater High School, the other CHS down the road. I was stabbed 32 times by a 6'4" manipulative man, and I was left lying in the road to die. This happened just 2 weeks after my 20th birthday, and as I said, just 1.5 years after I graduated high school. But when I was in high school, nobody spoke to me about dating violence or domestic violence. And I am so grateful that Countryside is recognizing how important this issue is and has this presentation for you guys today. This is my 6th year speaking to Teen Dating 101, and I am so honored. When I started 6 years ago, I was so nervous and I almost could barely get through my presentation, but I knew that the impact was much bigger than myself because of what young girls and boys would come up to me and tell me after or write to me and say to me. So I'm so grateful to be here. And I thank God every single day that I'm not another forgotten statistic and that I didn't lose my life that night. People start to heal the moment they feel heard. And I am grateful. As I said, I've been speaking out for the last 6 years, and I'm so grateful that my voice is heard here locally where I work as an advocate, speaking in schools and raising awareness about the epidemic of domestic violence. And I also get to help survivors rebuild their lives through Hands Across the Bay and get survivors on the path to independence and self-sufficiency. I'm also grateful that my name and story has been shared in headlines across the world on 48 Hours in 2020, on Investigative Discovery, in People magazine, on CNN and Fox News and BBC and on Nancy Grace, in Japan and Germany and down in South America. I've shared my story across the entire world, but none of that matters because the only spotlight that matters right now is the one that we're shining in this room on the dark and hidden but completely preventable issue of domestic violence. And I wish I knew then, when I was in your seats, what I know now, and I never want another young man or woman to go through the same. Growing up, I was very smart. I received straight A's in school, and I was volunteering at the hospital. I was working my first job since the day I turned 16 at Dairy Curl. And although I was very smart, the one subject, the one lesson I never got in life was that about domestic violence and dating violence. I had no idea about the warning signs. I didn't know what the red flags were. I didn't know about the cycle of abuse. I also didn't know how much help is available in our community for victims of abuse. I do not blame anyone but my attacker for what happened, but hindsight is 20/20, and knowledge is power. So looking back, I've tried to figure out how does this happen, and I felt that if my school had Hands Across the Bay's presentation or Teen Dating 101 come into my school and I would have got this education, I would have never gone through what I did. With where I am today, I would never want to go through what I went through again, but I wouldn't change it because I feel that my purpose on this earth is to speak about this issue because it is currently a public health crisis in our country, affecting 10 million victims annually. More than 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men have experienced rape, stalking, or physical violence by their intimate partner. But more importantly, with what we're discussing here and now, is this bottom bullet point right here. 1 in 3 teenagers are currently in some form of abuse in their relationship right now. And when you look at this room of how many teenagers and how many of you all are in this room, the number 1 in 3 is heartbreaking and it's startling and shows us that we have a lot of work to do. And that's why we're here today breaking our silence about this issue. It's so important this message here at the bottom that if you are experiencing some form of abuse, it's so important to know that you're not alone and there is help available. I want to start today by giving you a little bit of background on domestic violence, and then I'll share my own personal experience of overcoming this horrific abuse. Domestic violence does not discriminate. It can happen to individuals from all walks of life. It affects individuals of any race, religion, culture, or age. Abusers can be male or female, and I will share my perspective today from a female survivor perspective, but it's important to recognize it does not discriminate across all walks of life. And it also comes in many different forms. So people think of domestic violence and dating abuse as strictly physical violence. So if I'm not being physically hurt, beat, punched, hit, slapped, then I'm not being abused. But that is not correct. It comes in all different forms. Abuse can be not only physical, but also sexual, mental, verbal, emotional, and financial. And the frequency and severity from one relationship to another may vary dramatically. But the one constant component is one partner's efforts to gain and maintain power and control over the other. And it's important to recognize it's all about power and control. Alcohol does not make somebody become abusive. Negative childhood experiences do not make somebody become abusive. It's strictly the desire for power and control in any form. Domestic violence doesn't care if its victims are rich or poor. Domestic violence doesn't care if its victims are educated or not at all. Victims of abuse can be doctors and lawyers, but also high school dropouts or stay-at-home moms. Domestic violence doesn't care that I was a 20-year-old college student with a full life ahead of me, with dreams and plans, when I was called over and over in the middle of the night and manipulated to meeting my ex-boyfriend to have one last hug and have closure from our relationship. Of course, our relationship didn't end, or our relationship didn't begin or end that night. So I want to take you through the dynamics of how does high school love turn down such a dangerous and deadly path? How does this happen? So when we started dating, as I said, I met him my junior year. He was a senior, I was a junior. And we met at Clearwater High School. When we met, it was your normal high school relationship. We were hanging out every moment we could, and we were texting every moment we weren't. He was very charming, well-liked. He was really brought in to my family as one of my mom's own. And we just spent every moment together. He was known as like a gentle giant. As you can see, he's 6'4", out and 5'1". So he kind of towered over me, but it was more of a safe and loving, protective, gentle giant in the beginning. And I've tried to dissect our relationship of how does this happen. So looking back, these are the behaviors that I noticed that were changing. So I noticed the biggest change when I began to apply to go to college and graduate high school. This is when he became very jealous of me. I received quite a bit of scholarships to go into nursing school. I was volunteering, yada, 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 like I said, and he hated my accomplishments. He belittled me. He put me down. He called me names. He did not like me succeeding ahead of him. He was losing control in our relationship. And these are ways in the power and control wheel that a partner will try to gain and maintain power and control. And that's the bottom line of what abusive relationships are all about. And obviously, I didn't like the way he was treating me with putting me down and calling me names and being a jerk and being an idiot. Well, I tried to leave. I don't want to be treated this way. So I tried to break up with him. And that's when he said, as his girlfriend, I should be helping him, not abandoning him. And if I was to leave, he was going to commit suicide. And this was a big weight to carry as a 17-year-old. It's a form of abuse. If somebody's using threats like this over your head, it is abuse. And it's so important to seek help and seek guidance from the people you'll meet here just shortly here at your school. And so he started, trying to threaten suicide. And at this point, I didn't want him to harm himself, so I agreed to stay. And I tried to get him help. We sought free mental health counseling, and he got involved in my church. And he also wasn't like this all the time. And if he was ever to say anything or to do anything, he was very sorry. And since I was completely uneducated about the dangerous warning signs, all these are warning signs, I confused this emotional and verbal abuse with what he was doing with him just being a jerk. I accepted that this is how men are, and bottom line is I didn't understand my value or my worth. I also grew up in a home where arguing and violence was normal, especially between my dad and my brother. that ultimately led to my family unit falling apart, my parents' divorce, always arguing, always fighting. My brother was very abusive when I was younger. And so I didn't have a role model male figure show me the type of love I deserve or the type of relationship I should be in. So I did not make good choices at that time in my life. And I want to educate you about the cycle of abuse so you can understand. As soon as you can understand the cycle, you can be aware of the cycle, and you could be the one to break the cycle. And this cycle can go through your friendships, through your relationships, and it's so important. So I want to go through the education so you can understand when talking about the cycle of abuse how prevalent it is in relationships. So all relationships start in the honeymoon phase. Everything's great, of course, and wonderful and amazing, and the best partner you've ever imagined. Well, as time goes on, maybe nitpicking and criticizing starts. Maybe drinking and drug use starts up. Yelling, threatening, destroying property, punching the wall, punching the dashboard, punching the door, towering over you. All of these are forms of abuse to build tension and instill fear. At this point, victim might try to calm and reason, don't stay away, you don't know what's going on, just walk on eggshells, don't make them mad. Well, the next phase could happen. Any kind of form of abuse, hitting, punching, rape, strangulation, humiliation, embarrassment, any kind of situation going on can happen. The response would be, you might try to protect yourself, call the police, get away, leave the situation, fight back. If you're being hit, you might hit back. But the next phase, they're so sorry. Please forgive me. I will never do this again. I promise. It wasn't me. I was drinking. I was this. I was that. All these excuses pile up. Gets counseling. I'll never do it again. Gets your family involved to support. Well, okay, maybe you'll agree to stay. Maybe you'll take them back. You'll feel hopeful that it will be better. You'll hold on to that love and that hope that what once was might be again. But you can never erase the abuse that's already happened. And so you might feel happy and hopeful that it will get better. But unfortunately, the cycle will continue. The honeymoon will phase out. Nitpicking, criticizing will go back up. Tension building will phase to an abusive episode, to the honeymoon phase, to the tension, to the abuse. And it continues on. Weeks can pass, months can pass before the cycle goes around and around again. You can spend months in the honeymoon phase before tension building, but I promise it will continue. The time will be shorter and it will be more severe as time goes on. So I just wanted to take a moment to educate you on the cycle so you can be aware of the cycle, as I said, and you can be the one to break the cycle if you recognize it in your friendships or in your relationships. I was not aware of this as a teenager, so I didn't make good choices. But I learned this important lesson. If you change your choices, you can change your life. And that sounds really simple, right? But it's so important. And I think about this all the time. All of our lives is made up of our choices that we make every single day. So if you're at a crossroads and you think, is this choice going to take me down a good, happy, positive path with the right friends and the right group and, to succeed in school and to be a good citizen? Or is this choice going to take me down a bad path with the wrong friends, sneaking out, doing things I'm not supposed to, illegal activity, whatever it is? We are in control of our choices. We are in control of our mind. We are in control of our lives. So as soon as I learned this, I can change my choices away from choosing these type of men, away from, not knowing my self-esteem and self-confidence. And another very important lesson I've learned is obviously the learning about the red flags and changing the choices of how you choose your partners, of what you're looking for or what you're letting slide. So this important slide here goes through what are the red flags. What do we look for? How do we recognize this? So I want to go through these red flags of abuse to show you what to look for. Obviously, as I experienced, name-calling, put-down, screaming, jealousy and controlling or possessiveness. In a healthy relationship, your partner should talk love and light and support you and build you up. Should not belittle you and call you name or put you down. That's not what love is. That's not what love is at all. Isolation and preventing you from seeing your friends and family. Abuse thrives in isolation. So the more your friends and family are away, the more that control will happen. Using cell phones, social media to control, intimidate, or humiliate the victim. These are huge nowadays, as I'm sure you know. Social media is just taking over, and you guys are connected at every moment, and it is a way that abuse thrives. Where are you? What are you doing? Why did you like that? Who are you talking to? Who are you following? I mean, there's so many things. We are all our own individual people. And in a healthy relationship, you can have your friends, your partner can have their friends, and then you'll have your relationship together. That's the dynamics of a healthy relationship. And you don't have the right to check in and wonder what somebody's doing and having to know every 2 seconds, keep tabs on somebody else. Because you are not their parent. That's the parent's job. That's not the partner's job, especially when you're a teenager. So you do not have the right to control and check in and follow somebody. Blaming your actions for their abusive behavior. So if everything that you do is always, twisted, or everything they do is somehow twisted to be your fault. If you didn't wear those short shorts, then I wouldn't have gotten so angry. Or if you didn't talk to that guy or that girl, then I wouldn't have flipped out. It just gets twisted as in it's your fault that I'm an abuser. But this is just a blame. This is abusive. Threatening suicide to keep you from breaking up with them. Threatening to harm you or people you care about if you were to speak up. Making you feel guilty if you don't consent to sex, or pressuring you to have sex and not taking no for an answer. That is illegal. It is abusive. No means no, and you have the right to say no. And if somebody's not listening, that is abusive. That is illegal, and you can report that. Lastly, if you have a child, threatening to have your child taken away from you or telling them lies. So if you notice any of these red flags in your relationship, please know it can and most likely will lead to physical violence. And ignoring them, I promise, will probably lead down physical violence. You can only push things under the rug for so long. Think about, let it slide. He called me a name, but he was laughing, right? It was a joke. Let it slide. He, checked on me and over and over and over again, but he's really just misses me and he's worried about me. Let it slide. These can go on and on and on. But the more you let things slide, push them under the rug, it'll start piling up to where you have to deal with it. You cannot ignore it any longer. And that's usually when it'll take it to the next level. And as teenagers, you have to realize that these are warning signs of unhealthy. This is abusive. So nobody's perfect. We are all human. If you recognize, hey, I kind of do that a little bit, or now a couple of those bullet points may be something in my life. Now is the time that you can recognize that this is not okay behavior. This is abusive behavior. Especially while you're young, you do not want a record. You do not want your choices now, what you're making as a teenager, to impact your life forever. And it will, especially when it comes to domestic violence. So during this time, I ignored, these red flags that I was noticing. And because I stayed, it led to physical violence. There were 4 occasions that started with a push and ended with his hands tightly wrapped around my throat to strangle me. And I'm sure you're wondering, if he hurt me 4 times, strangled me, why would I stay? Why would I be in that? Well, I'll tell you. After he would hurt me, he would then begin attempting suicide. He would either pretend that he was going to cut himself. He started swallowing pills and alcohol. He one time even jumped out of my car when I was driving 40 miles an hour, just jumped out of the car in the road. And these were all after he would hurt me. So I quickly learned that he would turn the tables to make himself appear the victim. As in, even though I was just hurt and hysterically crying because I was just strangled, now I'm consoling him to stop him from taking the pills. It was very twisted. I feel like when I look back at my life at that time, I feel like it was brainwashing. I can't even believe I was in this type of situation. I was a strong, smart, independent girl, but I was hiding and I was trapped in an abusive relationship. And I stayed out of fear. I was hysterically crying, and he would make sure he had my phone and my keys, and he said, if my mom was to come home right now and see me this way, crying and hysterical and boo-hoo, he said he would murder all of us. He'd tell me what he would do. He had nothing to live for, so I better be quiet. And that's exactly what I did. I stayed quiet about it. And there are so many reasons of why women stay and men stay in these abusive relationships, and these are just some of them I've listed down here. Their religious beliefs may be thinking divorce is wrong. They may think this is normal and they've grown up this way. They might be believing the promises of change and hope that it's going to get better. They may have low self-esteem because they've been crushed for so many years in this abusive relationship. So we as society, I hope that you will leave here, stop asking the question of why does he or she stay, and start asking, how can I help? And why is this happening? And what can I do to make this better? So I hope that you will stop the victim blaming in our society. So finally, one night, I was able to get away. And on this night, it was different because we were outside. And I was able to run away from him and call 911. and he was arrested that night for domestic battery. I was able to run. He chased me the entire time I was on the phone, and until the police arrived and he was caught. And he gave a nice smiling mugshot when he got to jail that night. But finally, I was free. And with the help of the police, they helped me end it. I had them go and tell my mom with me. She had no idea what was going on. It was so hard. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, honestly. Love my mother to death. And I had to break my silence to her. I had to break that I was lying about this, that I was holding this secret. And over the next 3 months, I decided, I have to reclaim my life. And being single, safe, and happy were the 3 best things I could be. And I said to myself, how can I celebrate leaving an abusive relationship? How does this feel? Well, the only way to describe how it could feel to me was I went skydiving. I jumped out of a plane for my 20th birthday. I said, how does it feel leaving an abusive relationship? This is how I felt. But unfortunately, I thought I was free, but my nightmare was just beginning. As you saw in the video, on January 24th, 2012, my entire life changed. Robert went to court that morning for the battery charge, so he decided that this would be the night that he'd set out to kill me. But what he told me, call me, I'm like, ignore. I'm sleeping. It was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I finally answered, demanding to know, what do you want? You need to leave me alone. He said, after everything we've been through, can you just give me a hug? He said, I'll leave you alone forever and never bother you again. He was in my area. He was crying. He said, we need to have closure. He said, we've been together for 2 years. You're my best friend, and we were best friends at one point. He said, he was pulling on my heartstrings, manipulative, And I said, fine. I had an exam the next morning. I felt that he would not stop. The calls just kept coming in, so I had an exam at 8 a.m. in chemistry, and I said, fine, let me know when you're here. And there are 2 pieces of advice that I hope that you will take all of your life. The first is that you'll never ignore your intuition. You'll always listen to your intuition. It's that little voice inside you that whispers something's right or wrong. We all have this ability for a reason. You all have your intuition in your gut. You have to attune to that and listen to it and follow it. I promise, if you follow it, it will lead you down the path that you're supposed to go. We all have this ability. Ignoring mine that night turned out to be the greatest mistake of my life. I felt it was wrong, but I felt, hurry up and get this over with. I was, completely naive, completely uneducated about the fact, and I didn't even know that the period of time after leaving an abusive relationship is extremely dangerous and volatile, and when a majority of murders occur. When somebody feels they've lost everything, they are capable of anything. So in an abusive relationship, often this person feels like they're your everything, and when you cut that control, you leave, that's what it takes usually to the next level of danger. And you do not owe anyone face-to-face closure or an apology if they've hurt you or harmed you in any way. You do not owe them meeting up. You can break up them over text message. That's like against all the rules of what rules? This is for your safety. You do not owe somebody face-to-face closure, breakup, apology for any reason. It is not safe, and it's when a majority of murders occur, as I said. But at a week after my 20th birthday, I was naive, and I knew nothing about my intuition or how dangerous after leaving an abusive relationship is. So I walked outside. And he was already standing next to his truck. He put his arms around me for the hug that he cried and begged for, and squeezed me tight. And as soon as he squeezed me tight, he already had a switchblade in his left hand. Flipped it open and stabbed me in the back of the shoulder. Second one was the back of my neck, and the third one was on the side of my face here. Until the stab hit the side of my face and my mouth filled with blood, did I even know what was happening. And that began the fight for my life. There were 2 angels in the park across the street to save me. They were teenagers, just like you guys, 17 and 18 years old. They heard me screaming. A young boy and girl ran over. The guy pulled them off me, and the girl called 911. He threatened them with a gun. He didn't have one, but he told them that he would shoot them next if they didn't run away. So they ran away, but never out of eyesight. That's when he went and got a second knife, came back to me again. And I'll spare you and myself from reliving all of the gruesome details of the attack. but there were 32 wounds total, 19 in my head, neck, and face, the rest in my arms and hands as I fought back. My skull was broken, my nose was fractured, jaw was broken, 3 of my teeth were knocked out. My facial nerve was severed here, leaving me with paralysis. And I had a massive amount of blood loss that caused me to suffer a stroke when I was lying in the road alone. And as I was lying in the road alone, after he left, all I had the strength left to do was to pray. I kept praying and praying for God to save me. You cannot let my mother walk out to my murder scene right now. I was 20 years old and she was sleeping inside the house. I just kept praying for God to please don't let my mother come out here to see this. And as I prayed my final prayer, because I wasn't going to make it, I felt myself taking my last breath. I said, all right, Lord, if this is your will, please forgive me for my sins and take me to heaven. And as soon as I said my final prayer, a police officer, Officer Melissa Harris, shined her light on me from down the road and zoomed over. And immediately I felt a rush of life come back. And after my anonymous angels called, Melissa Harris, next I had Jackie and Jason, my Sunstar angels. Then came the fire department. Then I was airlifted in the helicopter with these amazing angels, my heroes. And as I was airlifted to the helicopter to Bayfront, this amazing man, Dr. Jeff Johnson at Bayfront, was waiting at the top of the helicopter pad to start working on my saving my life as soon as I arrived. And he was an Afghanistan war trauma surgeon, and he treated me just like I was war injuries. And he worked for 3 hours resuscitating me over and over and over again. He said he replaced my entire blood volume twice. I was given 12 units of blood overall, and I actually died 4 times on his table. But he said I wasn't giving up, so neither was he. And he literally worked for 3 hours to stabilize me and stop the bleeding. Rock bottom, where I fell in the dirt, became the solid foundation upon which I rebuilt my life. And when I woke up in the hospital, I knew that I was here for a special reason. I felt it. I told myself, my mom is the one over and over told me that I was not saved to live an angry or bitter life. And I made the decision that the attack was one day in my life, and it will never define me. In life, we're allowed to have bad days, but it doesn't mean you have a bad life. And when I was in the hospital, I was in there for 3 weeks at first, in the ICU, in the trauma floor. Then I spent the next year in therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, occupational therapy. I've had about 10 surgeries to get where I am now. I had to learn how to walk again, talk again, use my hands, drive my car, close my eyes, smile. I wanted so badly to be Melissa I was before. I wanted to get back to my job at the hospital. I wanted to get back to school to be a nurse. That was because I really wanted this to pretend like this never happened. But what I didn't know at the time is that when you go through something traumatic, it changes you. And I had to come to a place of full acceptance of this is my new life. This is my purpose. This is what God called upon my life. And I've learned a very important lesson that I want to share with you guys. If you can't change the situation that you're in, you have to change your view of it. Think about this. Can't change the situation you're in, change how you see it, all right? I couldn't close my eyes and make the scars disappear. I could not ignore the pending court case and the letters I got every single month. I couldn't stop the news from calling over and over and over. They want the story from me. You can't change how others treat you or what they say about you. What you can change is how you react to it. As I said, we're in control of our choices, our reaction, our lives. That's what you can control. And when something bad happens, you have 3 choices. You can let it define you, you can let it destroy you, or you can make the choice to rise above and let it strengthen you. So, whatever you're going through in your life, know that tomorrow's a new day. I love this analogy. Today, caterpillar. Tomorrow, give you a butterfly. You never know. Don't lose hope because you never know what tomorrow can bring. I honestly mean that. We have this blessing of a chance that we get to start over new every single day. We have 24 hours to start fresh. Just a bad day, not a bad life. These are things I tell myself all the time. And pain and hard times are temporary, but I promise that whatever it is, you can overcome. And especially when you're a teenager, when bad things happen or breakups or whatever, it feels like it's the end of the world, but I promise you will get through. And this is only temporary times, and it's very small in the bigger picture of life. So just be kind and patient with yourself, and be kind and patient with others, knowing that we're all in the same boat here. We're all going through the same stuff. So, as I said, I couldn't change what happened. I couldn't change that I was victim in the case, and I had victim red stamp on my forehead. I couldn't change that. But what I could change is the victim mentality. I was not going to be a victim. And there are many choices in crossroads in my life that I had to physically, mentally choose that I'm not a victim. One of those was in my school journey. So I obviously had a traumatic brain injury, very severe brain injury. I was not the same when I woke up. I was not who I was when I walked outside that night. And fast forward to a speech therapy lesson. I'm sitting across from my speech therapist going over addition and subtraction and cognitive problems and cognitive tests and all that. And I was getting a lot of them wrong. So she sat me down and said, you're going to be very disappointed when you go back and don't do well, because you'll never be the student you were before. I was like, what? You don't know me? How do you know who I am as a student and what I am capable of? Well, her telling me that, that was the fuel that fired my return right back to school. I said, you're wrong, I'm going to go back. And although they made me go down to part-time and school was a lot harder and it took me a little bit longer, I never gave up. So what's important in life is that you just never give up. You just show up, get up, get dressed, just never give up. As long as you're showing up, that's already way more than half the battle. And so with school, I'm pleased to let you all know that although it took me a little bit longer, I didn't listen to her and I went right back. In that same year, December of 2012, so in January 2012, I had to learn how to walk again. In December of 2012, I was walking across the stage at graduation. And then it took me a little bit longer, as you can see the date, but in May of 2016, last year, I am proud to say I graduated summa cum laude with my bachelor's degree in business management. And I tell you this because I think all the time back to that therapist that told me to take off school. You won't be able to do it. And I think all the time, what if I listened to her? I know I wouldn't be where I am today. I know I wouldn't be what I'm doing right now. So whatever anybody's speaking into your life, if somebody's telling you, who's holding you back from your dream or what you feel your purpose, anybody that's speaking negativity in your life, you have to tune out the voices. You have to follow your own dreams, your own heart, your own path, especially at this age as a teenager. You're setting yourself up for your future in your life. Don't let somebody come in and try to control your dreams because it doesn't match theirs. I just know that if I would have listened to that lady, I wouldn't be here. So don't listen to outside voices, listen to your inner voice and your inner heart, knowing you can do anything. Anything is possible as long as you never lose hope and faith and never give up on your dreams. Another part of my journey that felt like it was never going to end was the court case. It took about 2 years through the trial. After leaving me, he did attempt suicide, took pills and crashed his car, but he was also saved, taken to the hospital, and it took 2 years through the court system until finally in October of 2013, I am pleased to let you all know he was sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. And he was a 22-year-old man when he was sentenced to life in prison. It took 2 years. So imagine being 22 and a decision you made with your high school girlfriend or boyfriend would affect you for the rest of your life. So it's so important to know that what's going on right now will affect you for the rest of your life. And you do not want to make decisions that will last forever or leave you with records or lead you down bad paths. It's just so important to know that if you feel yourself losing control, that you must seek help. Robert Burton didn't seek help, didn't walk away, and as a result, not only was I almost murdered, but he is now serving life in prison. A quote that I love is, "My abuser tried to bury me, but he didn't know I was a seed. I chose to grow from the dirt I was left in, and I blossom wherever I am led." And this day was a defining moment in my life. This court case, the sentencing, it changed my whole life. And on that day, I made the decision that I needed to take a huge leap of faith and let go of my plan, let go of the nursing and all that stuff that I was, for some reason, holding on to, and follow God's plan. And when I let go of my plan, everything fell into place. I took a huge leap of faith, as I said, quit my job, and I became a full-time advocate for the organization that helped me rebuild my life, and that's Hands Across the Bay. At Hands Across the Bay, we help rebuild the lives of survivors after they leave abusive situations, and all kinds of different things we do. We help foster kids who age out of foster care. We help them get stabilized. We help single moms and single dads get stabilized and help them, whoever falls through the cracks. And I feel so blessed every day that I walk into work. I feel I'm fulfilling my purpose. I also get to do what I'm doing right now and go into schools and share my story, because I will never be silent again. And I share my story for 4 reasons in particular. First of all, I share my story to be a voice for the victims who are hiding in silence and fear. For anyone who is being emotionally beaten down by somebody who claims to love them. Please know you are not alone, that you deserve love, that it will not get better. You know, you need to stand up for yourself and walk away and seek help and resources and guidance on how to properly navigate the breakup. And we have those resources right in your hands and right here over on this table. And the second reason I speak out is for my survivor sisters and brothers. Our stories may be completely different. You know, we may have grown up this way. You may have had a boyfriend that was this way or a girlfriend that was this way. But it's important that as survivor sisters and brothers, that there's no comparison between one person's journey and another. You know, we're in this together, and by sharing your story, you are strong, and you have no idea who you can help by breaking your silence. The third reason I speak out is for those who are uneducated and unaware of domestic violence and the dangerous effects. They don't understand that someone they know and love is going through this. I speak for them for education and prevention. And number 4 is the most important reason of all. I speak for those who have been forever silenced because their abuser succeeded in taking their life. I was this close to losing my voice, but for some reason I'm still here. So I have dedicated my life to carrying on our angels' voices. And at Hands Across the Bay, unfortunately, I meet so many mothers of murdered daughters and grandchildren, and it never gets any easier. So my promise to them every time is that I'm carrying on their child's voice as I speak in a high school, on the news, and obviously as I'm speaking to you now. So in closing, I want to say, I'll bring it back up to the top with some really awesome news. I understand and I know that not all men are this way. And there's a silver lining to my story that I'd like to share. This horrific night not only led me to find my purpose on this earth as an advocate for Hands Across the Bay, but it also led me to meet Cameron. Cameron was a firefighter that was on my call. He is actually the firefighter that set up the landing zone for the helicopter that Bayfight landed, and he helped load me into it. We met 1 year later when I was speaking for the first time, sharing my story for the Haven, our domestic violence center here. And as I was speaking, after I was finished, they said, we have a surprise. The first responders that were there are here, and for me to thank them. Well, the next week, Cameron invited my mom and I to dinner at the fire department, and the rest is history, okay? We got to talking, laughing, dating, and on March 4th of this year, I said yes, and we are now married. So, fairy tales are more than true, not because they show that the dragon exists, but that the dragon can be beaten. And, yeah, let's give a round of applause for Cameron. Aw, he'll be so happy. No. I share this good news to remind you, I share for a reason, that you can make the choice. Remember, life is about choices. You can make the choice to have a happy, positive life after tragedy. And there is life and love after abuse, but you have to be fully love yourself and heal before you can be loved by somebody else. Everyone in this room and on this earth deserves a healthy, safe, nonviolent relationship. Your partner should make you feel safe and loved and respected and complete, not in any way abused or fearful or intimidated. I encourage you to share your story and never settle for less than you deserve. Know that I have taken the mistakes I've made and turned them into lessons and teaching tools for you. So please remember that my name is Melissa Dohme. This is my story. Don't let it be yours. Thank you.